Next, we're moving into our public comment portion of our board meeting. These will be limited to 2 minutes. Sybil Child, are you going to flash something when it gets close, or call something on your screen? Or I forgot to ask you that earlier.
Yes, thank you for that reminder. Let me pull up my timer. One moment.
Okay, so I'll be calling these out. I'll apologize early if I don't pronounce your name correctly, and I'll call out who will be speaking. I'll put somebody on deck like we've done in the past. So Sybil, let me know when you're ready, please.
Chair, I'm ready.
Okay, we're going to start off with Juliet Reynolds with Monica Wilbur on deck. Julia, were you with us? Okay, we can come back. Monica Wilbur with Rihanna Danzy on deck. Monica, are you with us?
I am.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning. I want parents to know some of the things that the USBE will be discussing today and tomorrow, because as Member Earl said this morning, this is about children and families. I want them to know that the USBE will continue to try to entrench divisive CRT policies, even more so into our schools. Your own diversity and equity guidance documents define, quote, abusive conduct, unquote, as another quote, verbal, nonverbal, or physical conduct of a parent or student directed toward a school employee. Parents need to know that you are viewing abuse as a one-way street. The USBE voted yes on this language to single out that only parent or student conduct qualifies as abusive. I want parents to think about that. Parents need to know that your standards and assessment committee, with the exception of Member Earl, deserves a gold medal for its verbal gymnastics on trying to redefine biological reality to accommodate a radical transgender anti-family agenda. Parents need to know that schools across the state are collecting every kind of data possible on their kids through the gross overuse of online and tech platforms like Summit Education and Panorama Ed. Parents need to know your law and licensing committee is going to vote on a rule authored by your staff that values librarian rights over protecting children from explicit sexual materials. Members of the board, before you vote today and tomorrow on anything, ask yourselves first, are you knowingly voting for policies that deprive our kids of their privacy, of their innocence, or their trust in their fellow man? That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Monica. Next, we'll have Rihanna Danzy with Nicole Mason on deck. Rihanna.
Good morning, and thank you for the opportunity to address the Utah State Board of Education. My name is Arian Danzy, and I am the mother of 3 Utah public school students. The Utah State Board of Education must take concrete steps to protect marginalized school children. This is a life-threatening crisis in our schools, as punctuated by the recent suicide of a Black autistic 10-year-old student in the Davis School District. In reference to widespread racism in the Davis School District and explaining the purpose of an agreement entered into with the district, Assistant Attorney General Kristen Clark of the Civil Rights Division stated, pervasive racial harassment and other forms of racial discrimination in public schools violate the Constitution's most basic promise of equal protection. The settlement agreement will help generate the institutional change necessary to keep Black and Asian American students safe. The settlement agreement shows us the way out of institutional pervasive racism in schools by providing a roadmap to compliance with the Constitution and protecting children's civil rights. All Utah school districts should be required to adopt these 4 elements of the settlement agreement. 1, create an Office of Equal Opportunity to receive and investigate complaints of racial discrimination. 2, to develop and implement a plan to engage the community on the district's efforts to create discrimination-free learning environments at its schools. 3, review all policies and procedures related to racial discrimination. And 4, require annual diversity, equity, and inclusion training for staff and administration. In addition to school districts taking these actions to fight racism, the Utah State Board of Education should pass a resolution encouraging Governor Cox to declare racism in Utah schools a public health crisis due to racism's physical and emotional harm to Utah's children. This would focus state resources and generate policy ideas on protecting marginalized children from harm. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next, we'll have Nicole Mason with Emma Jenkins on deck. Nicole.
Hi, good morning, board members. My name is Nicole Mason with Utah Parents United. And when I was a junior in high school, I was assigned it was an AP English class to read a book that started out with 2 men in the back of a movie theater, masturbating, climaxing, and ejaculating. And then later in the book, it talked about a graphic murder. And I had to read parts of that book several times because it was the first time I'd ever been exposed to something like that. And it was really something that haunted me and left me sick to my stomach. And looking back at my junior year in this AP English class, that's really all I can remember. That's what I took with me from AP English, was this depiction of 2 men masturbating in the back of a movie theater. And I think about my AP English teacher, and I think now looking back, like, what a jerk that he would expose me to that. And I don't know what life lesson he was trying to get me to learn, but I would submit that whatever that end was, the end goal of having me read that book, that the ends do not justify the means if the means are not moral. Now, I know that the Law and Licensing Committee will be talking about this library policy, and 2 minutes isn't enough time for me to go into the ethical, moral, legal implications of what that policy looks like. So I'm going to email that to the committee for that consideration to be discussed tomorrow. But I would submit that there's a lot of great stuff out there, like Plato's Allegory of the Cave,
30 seconds.
Dante's Inferno. And I think that education should enlighten and uplift us, and it should invite us to be our best selves. And so I would just ask that as the board members are going through reviewing these policies, that we think about what the ethical, moral, and legal implications are, and think about what things we can do to help students be their best selves and not have them remember the worst parts of books or of humanity as they go through life. So thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Nicole. Next, we'll have Emma Jenkins with Brooks Stevens on deck. Emma.
I'm here as a high school student, and I would like to thank the board for their attention to LGBTQ inclusion. However, I have 2 major concerns. These are in relation to the new policy on student pronoun usage and the recent LGBTQ symbol bans. Currently, teachers and staff cannot use students' preferred pronouns without parent or guardian consent. This new policy has been justified by a law which defines parental rights. I ask that you reconsider this justification. The assertion that using a student's preferred name and pronouns violates parental rights is baseless and harmful. This policy is actively and negatively affecting students like me. Moving on to the second issue, Davis School District has, and several other districts have begun to discuss, bans of LGBTQ symbols. They are justifying this under a state law which protects freedom in the classroom through political neutrality. This interpretation of the law is flawed. LGBTQ symbols in schools have proven to lower suicide rates. I have personally witnessed these symbols connect suicidal and struggling students to adults that can support them. Lowering Utah's staggering student suicide rate through an inclusive educational environment is not and should not be considered inherently political. Rather, it is bans like these that are politicizing inclusive symbols. I'm asking the board create a policy interpreting the political neutrality law and clarify that LGBTQ symbols bans are not justifiable. I'm asking that the board recognize on a state level these bans for what they are, and that is discriminatory. Policies that allow LGBTQ inclusion through teacher and staff support lower student suicide rates. and I'm here as living proof of this reality. I urge the board to continue to take action as student lives are, quite literally, on the line. Thank you.
Thank you, Emma. Next, we'll have Brooke Stevens and then CJ Wilkinson. Brooke?
My name is Brooke Stevens, and I created the Laverna in the Library Facebook page to show examples of the explicit obscenity in Utah schools. I have spent my life and hundreds of thousands of dollars, because some places cost $12,000 a month, trying to heal the damage done to children who suffer traumatic abuse. The author of the book, Out of Darkness, has made the claim that children who suffer traumatic abuse need to see themselves reflected in literature. She's an English teacher. I strongly suggest you consult with doctoral level psychologists to get your information on the damage done by books that recount sexual assault, which is what Out of Darkness does. From my life experience, I can tell you that replaying abusive situations is not healing. In fact, my daughter, who suffered greatly before we adopted her, has to leave her classroom whenever they discuss abuse in any form. I've read extensively, searching for healing methods, and in the book, The Boy Who Was Raised as a Dog, the author Bruce D. Perry, a child psychologist, says that healing comes from the multitude of healthy relationships in a traumatized child's life. Why don't we introduce books that portray loving characters instead of this? Page 380 on Out of Darkness. Look at me, son, he said to Beto. Now I'm going to show you another side of what it means to be a man. What do you do with the field you own? You plow it. He walked over to Naomi. Lay down, he told her. Down. She dropped to her knees. Beto wanted to run, but he couldn't. Lie back, open your legs, stop crying. Then he pushed her back until her head was on the ground. Beto, you come here, watch, but don't try anything. I've got the gun right here. Beto looked long enough to see the revolver his father held near his sister's face. When you include these types of books in the name of diversity, your only outcome will be to increase the number of victims, rewound those who suffer, and perpetuate the cycle of sexual assault. Thank you.
Thank you, Brooke. Next, we'll have CJ Wilkinson and Sophia Anderson on deck. CJ?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, sorry about that.
No problem.
So today I'm actually going to speak on gratitude. And this is actually going towards all of the employees at the USBE and all of the teachers and school staff members all over the state of Utah who are showing up every day to do the work of equity and inclusion, and who recognize that our diversity is what makes us great in Utah. We appreciate all of you who show up to work with love in your hearts for all of Utah's students, and who try to make decisions with our students' mental, emotional, and physical safety in mind, alongside their normal education needs, because as we all know, they are absolutely intertwined. We appreciate those of you who are supporting students' First Amendment rights, their constitutional rights, and following Supreme Court cases along those lines, such as the Board of Education versus PICO and Grimm versus Gloucester County, which state that students do not lose their freedoms of speech or identity at the schoolhouse gates, and that they also have rights that must not be infringed upon. I also want to thank those of you who keep separation of church and state, because it's absolutely important to note that not everyone in the state,
30 seconds.
either adult or child, is a Latter-day Saint, and not everyone in this state, student or child, is Christian. And we know that you've received a lot of hate and harassment lately, much of it incited by a couple of your own colleagues. And we just want to thank you as a community for continuing to show up for all of our students. So thank you.
Thank you, CJ. Next, we'll have Sophia Anderson with Jen Brown on deck. Sophia? Do we see Sophia? Okay, we can come back to Jen, are you with us? Yeah, I see Jen.
Yes,
Okay, Jen
yes,
Brandt
I am.
with Becky Holt on deck. Jen.
Okay. Hi, I'm Jen Brown, President of Utah Citizens for the Constitution. Many prominent members of the community have come together to be part of this organization, and we want to acknowledge the work that has been accomplished on the state civic standards that are proposed K through 6. We want to add to the good that has already been done. As citizens, it is our responsibility to take part in this process. My organization has emailed each of you a report on the standards. Our conclusion is that the Utah statutes are not being followed, as well as the brevity in which our form of government, founding documents, and American history are studied is of concern. The term constitutional republic is not found within the standards, which is our form of American government. The standards must give essential content priority over more peripheral topics. We assert that core content must be taught yearly. I emailed the school board members last night with several pieces of information. One of those is a joint letter from the Senate President, President Adams, and Speaker Brad Wilson, the Speaker of the House. They have submitted a letter that states the Office of the Utah Legislative Auditor General has conducted an audit that found that there is a discrepancy in the schools which teaching about our constitutional government. And they are asking that this discrepancy be closed. In order for this expectation to be met, yearly instruction in our form of government needs to be achieved. And again, from those two, it says we expect that the final version of the standards will carefully adhere to the laws set forth by the legislature. And I would just like to tell the board, I look forward to continue communicate with you on this topic. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Jen. Next, we'll have Becky Holt. Is Becky with us? With Emily Daly on deck. Not seeing Becky. Is Emily with us?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, you're up with Bernadette Brockman on deck. And Emily.
Thank you. I appreciate this time to comment on this. This is a really big job, and I appreciate the time that has already been taken. I'm only going to actually speak on one little standard because it's indicative of what I have found in all the standards, and I've actually read all of them, and I've compared them with a site that's it's a Fordham Institute, and they went and rated every single state's civics standards, and they gave them a grade, and Utah gets a C, and that's with our current standards. Our proposed standards would actually lower us a little bit more than that. So right now, this proposed standard for K.3.4 explain why symbols like the US flag are considered important and what rules and traditions have been made to reflect that importance. But our state code 53G-10-304 says that item 2 says the instructions shall include the history of the flag, etiquette, customs pertaining to the display and use of the flag, and other patriotic exercises. So that is a stark contrast. Our code has outlined exactly what our standard should be, but our standard is explain why symbols like the US flag, which leaves it open to any symbol that could be even remotely considered to hold as much weight as the flag. So I would encourage more revision to the standards to make sure that they are at least meeting our Utah code that we already have. It's very specific, and the states that received the highest grading always had very specifics laid out and left very little ambiguity. Thank you.
Thank you, Emily. Next, we'll have Bernadette Brockman with Geneva Prothero on deck. Bernadette.
I'm here. Good morning, members of the board. Thank you for this time to speak. My name is Bernadette Brockman, and I wanted to go over some terminology with you. Non-binary, gender non-binary or NB, gender queer, bigender, androgen, trigender, queer, gender, quad gender, pangender, gender neutral, gender free, agender, neutroid, allogender, demi-boy, demi-girl, demi-man, demi-girl, demi-woman, feminine of center, masculine of center, girl flex, paragirl, boy flex, paraboy, libra feminine, libra masculine, gender fluid, amalgagender, a non-gender, moon gender, puzzle gender, FTX, which is born female and now identifies as non-binary, MTX, born male and now identifies as NB. There are only two biological sexes, male and female. Compassion. You can be compassionate because there are individuals who are experiencing distress and discomfort when they identify as other than male or female. We don't need to rewrite science in order to acknowledge that some people are gender non-conforming. We don't need to create different genders for people to gain acceptance. There is a difference between being accepting of one's identity and enacting into law an otherwise compelling acceptance of labels. There is nothing wrong with young people experimenting with their identity.
3 seconds.
The DSM states that among females who identify as male during childhood, change their mind. The rate may be as high as 88%. For males, it is high as 97.8%. However, writing into law or creating a gender identity policy is concerning. When definitions, like I shared with you, don't fit the narrative anymore, will you create another gender identity document? Or is there a better way to deal with our youth? Or is there a better way to deal with our youth as they experiment with their identity? Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you, Bernadette. Next, we'll have Geneva Prothero with Kelly, I think it's Strebel, on deck. Geneva?
First of all, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so I just wanted to go ahead and first of all tell Jenkins I definitely respect your pronouns. And good morning, my name is Geneva Prothero, and I am here today to ask for every one of you to support our school librarians. I started the Shirley the Librarian group in support of librarians. I never in my wildest dreams would have thought the librarians and authors would be next on the hit list of these small groups of loud, misinformed parents who have succumbed to the false narratives about books in public schools. Books are already vetted prior to being put on the shelves of our school libraries. A girl kissing a boy or a boy kissing a boy in a book is not pornography. I know and trust our school librarians. Our students deserve to have a wide variety of choices in their lives. As a child, going to the library was my first experience that I had to make choices for myself. I learned that I love to read about dragons, magic, cats, and history. Reading a book is a way to be able to travel without leaving your house. You can go back in time and visit with Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., Joan of Arc, King Henry V, Princess Diana, etc. You can also dance with fairies, ride a unicorn, and fight a giant in a book of fantasy. Our son's first book he checked out from the school library was about bugs and snakes. Even though it is not what I would have chosen, it was vital for him to choose because it gave him some independence. Books teach about compassion, love, diversity, how to use your imagination to be open to new ideas. These parents that are trying to ban books are seeking control. They don't want their children to think outside of their own box. Perhaps the best thing for everyone is to have these parents sign a form that prohibits their child from using the library. I wish I had answers for all of you. I do know that banning books is going to destroy America. Please do not take books off of shelves. Keep on supporting authors and invite them to school assemblies. I will do everything I can to support librarians, to support schools, to support the board, and to be able to support the LGBTQIA community. Books that do show them a vision of themselves can save lives. I also support books about Black history. Black children do deserve to be able to see themselves reflected in books. Thank you.
Thank you, Geneva. Next, we'll have Kelly Strabel with Kelly Jones on deck. Kelly.
Good morning and Happy New Year. I've been asked to suggest to this board that new resolutions be set. This board is to represent education in public schools in this state, and yet there are many areas of concern. This board needs to take some of the money that they are giving to schools to buy pornographic books and access to pornographic websites, data mining through Panorama, etc., and visit 3 counties a month. Rent an auditorium and actually hold some nighttime meetings and actually listen to the people instead of the legislature, Spencer Cox, the teachers union, and yourselves as to what should be in our public schools. Most of you think of yourselves as the final voice of education in Utah. Utah law actually gives that right to the parent or the guardian. If you can't travel to hear from the people who pay yours and the teachers' wages and give them time to speak and you to listen, then I and others suggest you resign today. We don't need cowards at the USB any longer. We need people standing up for what is right and willing to work with parents to achieve educational excellence, not Marxist indoctrination. We have teachers who want to do the right thing, who struggle with their personal values and losing their jobs due to forced education methods by this board and Marxist members of the legislature who codified social emotional learning into law. They, like
30
you,
seconds.
exposed for indoctrination. People in this state want representation that reflects their values and not that of left-wing ideology currently being forced in Utah schools. $75,000 in donations to Spencer Cox to get raises from him to give more to his campaign next time from teachers unions is not how you educate students. It is how you rip off taxpayers. Those who do not learn from history are doomed to repeat it. And here in Utah, we are practicing failed socialist programs and Marxist ideology. Get out of Salt Lake, rent auditoriums in 3 counties a month, and listen to the people rather than the Marxism found in Utah and nationwide politics. Give them time to speak and simply give the voice to them and allow them to be heard. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly. Next, we'll have Kelly Jones with Nicole Willis on deck. Kelly Jones, are you with us?
Good morning. Good morning to the board. Thank you for this chance to speak. My name is Kelly Jones. I'm an educator and a parent in Davis School District. I want to thank the board for working to ensure a variety of literature and scholarship is introduced to our students and for treating students on a case-by-case basis as we consider any potential barriers to school libraries. Parents can adjust access for their child, but should not be able to do so for mine. As we contemplate the next steps in ensuring an honest and inclusive history in our K-12 schools, I want to ask the board to consider expanding our Martin Luther King Jr. essay contest to include more. Last week, we honored the students who won this contest in Davis. I won this contest at Orem Junior High in the mid-'80s. It was a tremendous honor for me to be able to read about his life, someone who was largely unpopular until the day that he was murdered. Those who fought against equality did not want his success. Now they quote him. Let's expand this program to include influential women of color like Shirley Chisholm, Dorothy Pittman Hughes, or those who have paved the way for LGBTQ rights like Marsha P. Johnson and Harvey Milk. We have a road named for Harvey Milk in Salt Lake, but do our children know who he was? Due to the efforts of Better Days 2020, our students are just now learning about the influential women who helped build our state. Indigenous advocates like Sekala Saw and Metembebu Perry from Utah. But have we included contributions of our Pacific Islander citizens who built Iosepa 30 seconds amid discrimination and difficulty? This Utah history is vital to include amid calls for greater transparency and honesty. We must always honor Dr. King, and we can do so by using his example to continue expanding our civics programs to include those who, like he, paved the way for equality. In the words of his daughter, Bernice King, Unity does not equal justice. We should be unified by love and working for justice. But unity that seeks to calm unrest without working for justice is a component of false peace. As my father said, true peace is not merely the absence of tension. It is the presence of justice. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we'll have Nicholas Willis, and then we'll go to Juliet Reynolds. Nicholas. Not seeing Nicholas. Juliet Reynolds, and then Sophia Anderson.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. Hold on a second, sorry. I emailed each of you the policy that I will be referring to in my comment. And I'm here today to ask that the board adopt the book challenge policy Murray City School District has implemented as a template for the statewide policy. Our educators, administrators, and board members need relief from this epidemic of aggressive parents demanding books be removed immediately from libraries across the state. As a parent, I believe it is appropriate to have a pathway for voices to be heard and concerns addressed. As an adult, I know that hasty decisions without a balanced conversation usually fall short of expectations. This policy was developed with legal advice, and it not only provides a path for parents, but also allows the school community to meet and decide the fate of any book that is challenged. This process is fair and also allows the parent to opt their student out from being able to access the said book, which immediately removes their student's access to the book, no matter the outcome of the book challenge. The ripple effect that this has created for Murray City School District is that parent concerns will be heard. Our librarians know that our administrators respect them. Our educators know they are supported, and most importantly, our students know their voices are being heard and their diverse identities and life experiences will be represented.
30 seconds.
Yep. I want to publicly thank the Murray City School District for taking a huge step toward healing our broken community. I am proud to be a Murray City School District parent. The rest of the state deserves the same. Thank you.
Thank you, Juliet. Next, we'll have Sophia Anderson with Becky Holt on deck. Sophia, are you with us? Sophia? So, well, I believe that's our second call out for Sophia. Let's see if Becky Holt is with us with Nicholas Willis on deck. Becky Holt? Nicholas Willis? Okay, well, I had some challenges getting on or something. Want to thank everyone for participating in our public comment. Here, we also want to extend an invitation that public comments can be submitted in writing, and also want to thank those who participated, that they respected the comment period and summed up their comments at the conclusion of that period. So thank you.